If you've wanted a sports car with a boatload of American-infused character, and there's always only been one option, it's the Ford Mustang. And though it's been around for a long time now, it is a relative newcomer to the UK, particularly as a proper right-hand drive version. This latest Mustang takes the same classic formula of a big V8 engine, rear-wheel drive and a relatively comfort-focused driving style, and adds in a sharper new look as well as some funky new pieces inside. But is this a viable convertible option in 2023, or is it a bit of a dinosaur that should be left in the past? Well, that's what we're going to find out today. The Mustang definitely has all of the features that you'd expect of a characterful muscle car. It's got a long front bonnet, quite a heavily raked windscreen, and a long wheelbase, which makes it look, well, just very cool in our eyes. This one in particular is the California Series model, and that means it gets a really nice D-badged grille with a honeycomb effect pattern, bonnet nostrils, and a range of decals across it that help it stand out, not just from other cars on the road, but from other Mustang models. It's a bit of a hodgepodge inside the Mustang's cabin. You've got some nice classic inspired features like these toggle switches for the different driver settings, and I really like those because they're easy to use on the move. The main plastics are a little bit ropey, however, particularly around this area, and although they are easy to use, it just feels a bit scratchy and a bit nasty, really. The central screen in the middle has Ford's sync system running on it, and it's good to use, although it is quite small. And there just seems to be, well, just a general lack of finesse in terms of the overall quality. But the seating position is nice, and these seats themselves are very comfortable. And this California Special model in particular has some nice plaques to remind you that you're not in just any old Mustang. Again, it's just a bit of a mixture, and I'd like to see the material quality just uprated slightly. As I mentioned, it's best worth thinking about the Mustang's rear seats as for occasional use. Now, I've had to move this seat forward from my driving position just to get my legs in to illustrate what the rear seats are like. So you're definitely not going to want to promise taller mates some lifts in this car. You might be able to get smaller kids in the back here, and they'd probably be comfortable for a little bit. And there are also ISOFIX points for mounting child seats. So if you want to take children in smaller seats, then they're going to be just fine here too. But for taller adults, or even taller children, I think this is just going to be a little bit too tight. Though as we've looked at, the rear seat area of the Mustang is a little bit compromised, it does counter by having quite a good boot. There's actually 320 litres of space in here, and it is quite wide and quite deep too. So you're going to be able to get all those weekend bags in there, or indeed a good size amount of shopping should you want to do that. There aren't really any kind of hooks or lash points back here, so you're going to be mindful that things are going to roll about, particularly if you're driving in a slightly more spirited manner. But certainly in terms of practicality, I'd say the Mustang does come out on top against many of its rivals. So is this Mustang convertible as traditional to drive as, well, its exterior design? It's a bit of a yes and no, really. Of course, you've got that thumping 5-litre naturally aspirated V8 up front of you, developing 444 brake horsepower, so it's definitely quick off the mark. In the bends, a lot of gains have been made over older Mustangs, and it doesn't feel too wallowy, though this convertible version is definitely softer and less agile than its hardtop stablemate. We've also got a 10-speed automatic gearbox in this car, and as you might have seen in my review of the Ford Ranger, I just think a 10-speed gearbox is just too much. You've got steering wheel paddles here to take control over the gears, but say you spot a gap or you want to go for an overtake, you click 1, you click 2, you click 3, you're clicking through the gears for ages until you get one where you actually really want it, and by that time your gap is probably gone. You can leave the automatic gearbox to its own devices, but it just feels a little bit like it's never quite sure which gear it wants. And actually, when you're slowing down and you're coming to a stop, it can sometimes lurch ahead as it tries to pick the right gear. I just think it's a bit of a shame because the engine itself is an absolute peach, and it really is quite exciting to have this kind of engine set up in this day and age. You can get the Mustang with a manual gearbox, and I'd actually opt for that over this auto. Of course, it's not going to be as comfortable for long distance trips, but I just think that level of engagement, and also it's slightly easier to use and slightly easier to manage than this 10-speed is, despite being a manual. But what about the other aspects of this driving style? Well, it is physically quite a large car. The cabin itself is relatively cocooned. But because of those large dimensions and because your exterior edges are quite far away from you, it can take a little bit of acclimatization when it comes to judging where the Mustang is positioned on the road. Also for slow speed maneuvers or for getting it around a multi-story car park, you do just have to be a little bit wary of your edges because it can be quite easy to get them wrong. The engine, of course, produces a lovely exhaust note, and when you step on it, it does sound superb, and it's going to turn heads, well, a couple of miles away probably. And around town it burbles away nicely. You can also put it in quiet mode, which I think will be very useful if you're making early trips so you don't wake up all your neighbours. As a convertible, I think the Mustang works really well. There is very little buffeting going on inside here, and it feels like the breeze isn't affecting the cabin too much. You're sat quite far down into the car, so that really helps, and the screen is heavily raked over you, so all of that breeze and wind coming straight at the vehicle is pushed up and over or around the sides rather than through the cabin. The steering itself is actually a little bit loose, and although you can feel a little bit what the front wheels are doing, it's got a strange combination of being light and heavy at the same time. It's quite strange actually. Against something like an Audi S5 convertible or a BMW M4, which I guess you'd put it in a similar vein as in terms of power output, those kind of cars walk all over it dynamically. But again, as an experience, I think the Mustang comes out on top because, well, you've just got a huge V8, a very pleasant ride quality and setup, and it's all linked together into what is quite an interesting driving experience, particularly for people who are used to Europe-focused cars. This is more like an American vehicle that is also available here. The Mustang definitely captures some of the old school charm from muscle cars of yesteryear. It feels relaxed and quite exciting to drive, but it's definitely somewhat more, well, comfort focused than some of the other cars in its segment. The V8 engine, of course, is something of a dying breed, and it's great to still be able to experience it on the road today and in a brand new car, but other aspects of the Mustang just feel a little bit old hat when you compare it to cars in the same segment. I still think it's a very viable option if you are looking for an exciting convertible, but in terms of outright drivability, I do think that there are slightly better cars out there. Thank you for watching this motors.co.uk new car review on the Ford Mustang convertible. If you have enjoyed this video, leave us a like below and let us know in the comment section what you think of the Mustang. Would you like to live with a modern day muscle car, or would you like something slightly more up to date? And if you could subscribe to the motors.co.uk YouTube channel, that would be a great help. And if you'd like to get information on every time we upload a new video, then just click that bell icon.